The Cleveland Browns just dropped a bombshell that has the entire NFL world buzzing. And trust me, you're not going to believe how this coaching search is unfolding. After years of mediocrity, questionable decisions, and a revolving door that would make even the most patient fans lose their minds, Jimmy Haslam is doing something that nobody saw coming. He's not chasing the flashy names. He's not throwing money at the hottest coordinator in the league. Instead, the Browns owner is looking right inside his own building at two coaches who couldn't be more different. Two men who represent completely opposite visions for this franchise's future. And the craziest part, one of them just orchestrated the best defense in football, while the other is being blamed for one of the worst offenses in recent memory. This isn't just another coaching search. This is a chess match that could define the Browns for the next decade, and every single move matters. Before we dive deep into this absolute chaos, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the Browns coaching carousel is spinning faster than anyone expected, and you don't want to miss a single update as this story develops over the coming days. Let's rewind to where this all began, because to understand why Jim Schwartz and Tommy Rees are suddenly at the center of Cleveland's universe, you need to understand the Kevin Stefanski era and why it came crashing down in such dramatic fashion. On January 5, 2026, the Browns made it official. Kevin Stefanski, a two-time NFL Coach of the Year, the man who brought playoff football back to Cleveland after nearly 2 decades of darkness, was fired. But this wasn't your typical coaching dismissal. This was Jimmy Haslam standing in front of cameras at Browns headquarters, looking directly into the lens and basically admitting that everyone had failed, ownership included. 8 wins in 2 seasons. That's what Haslam kept repeating. 8 wins in 2 years. Horrible, he called it. Totally unacceptable. And you could feel the frustration bleeding through every word. The Browns had gone 5-12 in 2025, finishing 31st in scoring offense, 31st in passing yards, and 27th in rushing. The year before was even worse. Dead last in scoring, dead last in offensive touchdowns. For an offensive-minded head coach like Stefanski, those numbers were a death sentence, and Haslam made it clear that he couldn't accept another season of that kind of futility. But here's where things get interesting, where the entire narrative takes a sharp turn that nobody anticipated. While Stefanski was shown the door, General Manager Andrew Berry kept his job. The same Andrew Berry who built this roster, who made the Deshaun Watson trade that continues to haunt this franchise like a ghost that won't go away, who selected these players and constructed this team. He survived, and now he's the one leading the coaching search. The announcement sent shockwaves through the NFL community because Kevin Stefanski wasn't just any coach. He was beloved by many. He'd navigated impossible situations, dealt with quarterback chaos that would break most coaches, and still managed to earn Coach of the Year honors not once but twice. Within hours of his dismissal, other teams were lining up to interview him. The New York Giants, the Tennessee Titans, the Atlanta Falcons, all of them wanted a piece of Kevin Stefanski. He instantly became one of the hottest names in the entire coaching market. But Cleveland was about to go in a completely different direction, one that would divide their fan base right down the middle. The first name to emerge from the chaos was Jim Schwartz, and if you know anything about Browns football over the past 3 years, you know exactly why. This man has been nothing short of a defensive genius in Cleveland. When Schwartz arrived in 2023, he inherited a talented but underperforming defense and transformed it into an absolute wrecking crew. In his first season, the Browns led the entire NFL in total defense. Let that sink in. Number 1 in the league. They were first in yards allowed, first in first downs allowed, first in third down conversion percentage, first in tackles for loss. The defense was suffocating, relentless, and terrifying for opposing offenses. In 2025, despite the team winning just 5 games, despite the offense being an absolute disaster, Schwartz's defense still ranked 4th in the league in total yards allowed. And that's with injuries, with limited offensive support, with constantly being put in impossible situations because the offense couldn't stay on the field. Myles Garrett broke the NFL single-season sack record with 23 sacks under Schwartz's system. That's not a coincidence. That's elite coaching. Jim Schwartz is 59 years old, and he's been in the NFL trenches for decades. He started his coaching career right here in Cleveland back in 1993 as a personnel scout under Bill Belichick. Think about that connection for a second. He learned from one of the greatest minds in football history right in this organization. He worked his way up through the ranks, became one of the most respected defensive coordinators in football, and then got his shot as a head coach with the Lions from 2009 to 2013. His record there? 29 wins, 51 losses. Not great on paper, but context matters. He took over a Lions team that had just gone 0-16, the worst season in NFL history, and within 3 years had them in the playoffs. That's no small feat. Since then, Schwartz has built a reputation as a defensive mind master, winning a Super Bowl ring with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2018 as their defensive coordinator.
When Andrew Berry spoke about Schwartz on January 5th, you could hear the respect in his voice. He said Schwartz is an outstanding football coach, that he has earned the right for consideration, that the organization has tremendous appreciation for him. Jimmy Haslam went even further, saying absolutely when asked if he wanted to keep Schwartz in the organization. But here's the massive question that has Browns fans losing sleep at night. Does Haslam want Schwartz as the head coach or just as the defensive coordinator? Because if they hire someone else and Schwartz feels disrespected, he's gone, and losing Jim Schwartz would be catastrophic for this defense. The players have made their feelings crystal clear. Denzel Ward, the Pro Bowl cornerback, didn't hold back when reporters asked him about Schwartz. He said he has so much love and respect for Coach Schwartz that he would highly recommend him for a head coaching job, that Schwartz has helped his game tremendously, that he's a great leader who puts his players in position to succeed. Grant Delpit echoed the same sentiment, calling Schwartz a fiery guy who would be a great head coach, someone who's taken their defense to an elite level and kept it there. Even Myles Garrett, who rarely speaks publicly about coaching matters, has made it known how much he values Schwartz. There's a genuine fear among the defensive players that if Schwartz isn't promoted, they'll lose him entirely, and that would be a disaster for a unit that's the only thing keeping this team competitive. But then there's the other side of this coin, the wild card that nobody saw coming, Tommy Rees, a 33-year-old offensive coordinator with zero head coaching experience, coming off a season where the Browns' offense was statistically one of the worst in football. On the surface, promoting Reese sounds insane, but dig deeper and you start to see why Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry might actually be considering this move. Tommy Rees is viewed around the league as a brilliant offensive mind, a rising star who's been on a meteoric trajectory through the coaching ranks. He played quarterback at Notre Dame, went 23-8 as a starter, and immediately got into coaching after his playing career ended. He worked his way up at Northwestern, then returned to Notre Dame as offensive coordinator, then spent time at Alabama working with Nick Saban, developing some of the best quarterbacks in college football. In 2024, the Browns brought him in as a tight ends coach and pass game specialist. This past season, he was promoted to offensive coordinator. Now, I know what you're thinking. The offense was terrible in 2025, so why on earth would they promote the guy who was calling plays for that mess? Fair question. But here's the thing. When Kevin Stefanski was still calling plays through the first 9 games, the offense was a complete disaster. They couldn't move the ball, couldn't score touchdowns, couldn't sustain drives. It was painful to watch. In Week 10, Stefanski handed the play-calling duties to Tommy Rees, and while the offense didn't suddenly become elite, there were signs of life. More importantly, Rees was working with a roster that was fundamentally broken. His starting quarterbacks were 41-year-old Joe Flacco, a rookie named Dylan Gabriel who struggled mightily, and eventually Shedeur Sanders, another rookie who showed flashes but was clearly learning on the fly. There was no Deshaun Watson because he was rehabbing from an Achilles injury. The offensive line was decimated by injuries and age. The weapons were limited. Asking any coordinator to succeed with that group would be nearly impossible. But here's where Tommy Rees becomes a legitimate candidate and why the Browns might actually be serious about this. Shedeur Sanders, the rookie quarterback who was one of the biggest stories of the 2025 draft. Sanders fell shockingly far on draft night, and the Browns traded up to grab him. He's viewed as a potential franchise quarterback, an elite arm talent, intelligence, and the pedigree of being coached by his father, Deion Sanders. and Tommy Rees has spent every single day with Shedeur Sanders since he arrived in Cleveland. He knows his strengths, his weaknesses, his tendencies, his mental makeup better than anyone in football. Cleveland Browns insider Mary Kay Cabot made a fascinating point about this on her radio show. She said that the Browns believe in Shedeur Sanders as their quarterback of the future, then Tommy Rees might be the perfect head coach to develop him. No outside coach coming in would have the intimate knowledge that Rees has about Sanders. No one else could tell the Browns definitively whether Sanders is the guy or not. That insider intel is invaluable. The Browns are also terrified of losing Tommy Rees. Multiple college programs have pursued him aggressively for head coaching positions. Penn State interviewed him, UCLA was interested, Michigan wants to talk to him. If Cleveland doesn't promote Rees and instead hires an outside candidate, there's a very real chance Rees walks away to take a high-profile college job or gets poached by another NFL team. And if the Browns believe that Rees is the right coach to develop Shedeur Sanders, losing him could set their quarterback development back years. That's a risk Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry might not be willing to take. So now we're at the heart of this story, the moment that has NFL fans absolutely glued to their screens and debating endlessly on social media. On January 8, 2026, the Cleveland Browns began their head coaching search by interviewing both Schwartz and Rees, back-to-back interviews, two completely different philosophies, two drastically different age profiles. Two men who represent opposite paths forward for this franchise. It's a chess match, and every move matters because the wrong decision could set the Browns back another 5 years. The Schwartz case is built on stability, experience, and proven excellence. He's 59, he's been a head coach before. He understands the demands of the job. He's beloved by the players, especially the defensive core that forms the foundation of this team. If you hire Schwartz, you're betting on defensive excellence, on building around Myles Garrett and that elite unit, on bringing in an offensive coordinator who can fix that side of the ball while Schwartz manages the big picture. It's a safe play, a move that makes sense to anyone who values continuity and proven coaching ability. Plus, if you don't hire Schwartz and he leaves for another opportunity, you risk dismantling the one thing that actually works in Cleveland. That's terrifying.
The Tommy Rees case is riskier, but potentially more rewarding. He's 33 years old, an offensive mind in a league that increasingly values young, innovative play callers. He's worked with elite programs, learned from the best coaches in college football, and has the specific expertise needed to develop a young quarterback. If Shedeur Sanders is truly the future, having Rees as the head coach could accelerate his development in ways that no other coach could match. Rees also represents continuity in a different way. He's already here. He knows the roster, knows the personnel, knows what needs to be fixed. There's no learning curve, no awkward adjustment period. And let's not forget, Kevin Stefanski had zero head coaching experience when the Browns hired him in 2020, and he won Coach of the Year in his first season. Andrew Berry even brought that up when discussing the coaching search, making it clear they're open-minded about experience levels. But here's the brutal reality that has Browns fans torn. If you hire Jim Schwartz, you're essentially admitting that fixing the offense is secondary to preserving the defense. You're putting your faith in a 59-year-old defensive coach to hire the right offensive coordinator and hoping that gamble works out. If you hire Tommy Rees, you're betting everything on a 33-year-old with no head coaching experience who just oversaw one of the worst offenses in football, even if the circumstances were impossible. Both moves have massive risk. Both moves have passionate supporters and fierce critics, and Jimmy Haslam has to make a decision that will define his legacy as an owner. The interviews on January 8th were just the beginning. The Browns have also requested interviews with other candidates. Todd Monken, the Ravens offensive coordinator, who previously worked in Cleveland under Freddie Kitchens, is on the list. Dan Pitcher, the Bengals offensive coordinator, who worked with Joe Burrow and has ties to Andrew Berry from their time in Indianapolis, is another name. Aiden Durda, the Seahawks defensive coordinator, represents an outside-the-box international hire. And then there's the elephant in the room, the name that has Browns fans simultaneously excited and terrified, John Harbaugh. Yes, that John Harbaugh, the longtime Ravens coach who just got shockingly fired by Baltimore after 18 seasons. Harbaugh is a Super Bowl winner, a proven leader, one of the most respected coaches in football. And he has Cleveland roots. The idea of Harbaugh coming to Cleveland and facing his former Ravens team twice a year is the ultimate betrayal storyline that the NFL media would eat up for years. But let's get back to Schwartz and Reese, because these two are at the center of everything. The interviews have been described as legitimate by multiple insiders. This isn't Cleveland just going through the motions to make their internal guys feel valued. Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam are genuinely considering promoting from within, which is fascinating, given how badly they want to avoid another disaster hire. Think about the pressure on Andrew Berry right now. He survived when Stefanski got fired, but he's on borrowed time. If the next head coach fails, Berry is done. So he has to get this right. He can't afford another Freddie Kitchens situation where they promote the hot coordinator and it blows up spectacularly. He needs a home run, and he needs it immediately. The fan reactions have been all over the map, creating some of the most passionate debates in Browns history. On social media, Browns fans are split right down the middle. The pro-Schwartz crowd points to his defensive dominance, his player endorsements, his experience, and the absolute necessity of keeping that elite defense intact. They argue that you don't break up something that works, that Schwartz has earned this opportunity, that his past head coaching record with Detroit doesn't tell the full story of what he's capable of. They want stability, they want proven excellence, and they want to build around the strength of this team rather than gambling on an unknown quantity. Some fans have pointed out that the Browns already have an elite defense, so why not maximize that advantage by keeping Schwartz in charge while finding an offensive coordinator who can unlock the potential on that side of the ball? The pro-Reese crowd argues that offense wins championships in the modern NFL, that you have to prioritize quarterback development above everything else, and that losing Reese could be catastrophic for Shedeur Sanders' future. They point to Reese's pedigree, his work at Alabama and Notre Dame, his reputation as a brilliant offensive mind. They argue that age shouldn't matter, that the NFL is increasingly becoming a young coaches' league, and that betting on innovation and offensive creativity is the only way forward. Some fans believe that pairing Reese with Schwartz, where Reese is the head coach and Schwartz remains as defensive coordinator, could be the perfect combination that gives Cleveland the best of both worlds.
And then there's the third group, the fans who want neither Schwartz nor Reese and are desperately hoping that Jimmy Haslam goes outside the organization to find a proven commodity like John Harbaugh or someone with NFL head coaching experience. They're terrified of another internal promotion disaster, haunted by memories of Freddie Kitchens' one-year catastrophe. They want someone with gravitas, someone who can walk into that locker room and immediately command respect, someone who's been through the wars and knows how to navigate the brutal realities of being an NFL head coach. ESPN insider Jeremy Fowler added another fascinating wrinkle to this entire saga. He reported that Jim Schwartz is under contract with the Browns through 2026, which means Cleveland has the ability to block him from taking other coordinator positions. They can't stop him from leaving for a head coaching job somewhere else, but they can prevent him from joining another team as a defensive coordinator. This gives the Browns leverage, but it also creates a potentially awkward situation. If Schwartz interviews for the Cleveland job, doesn't get it, and then wants to explore head coaching opportunities elsewhere, the Browns would look terrible if they tried to block him. At the same time, if they hire someone else and expect Schwartz to just stay on as defensive coordinator under a new head coach, there's no guarantee that relationship would work. The new head coach might want to bring in his own coordinators. Schwartz might feel disrespected and want out. It's a delicate balancing act that could blow up in spectacular fashion if not handled perfectly. The pressure on Jimmy Haslam right now is immense. He's owned the Browns since 2012, and in those 14 years, the franchise has been an absolute disaster. They finished fourth in their division 9 different times. They had a perfect 0-16 season in 2017, one of the most embarrassing campaigns in NFL history. Haslam has now fired 6 head coaches since buying the team. 6 coaches in 14 years. That's instability personified. And every time he makes a hire, he talks about changing the culture, about building something sustainable, about ending the dysfunction. But it keeps happening. The Browns keep losing, the coaches keep getting fired, the fans keep suffering. And now, in 2026, Haslam is at another crossroads. He called the next 120 days crucial for the organization. He has to find the right head coach. He has to nail the draft with 10 picks, including 2 first-rounders. He has to make smart moves in free agency. He has to fix the offense while preserving the defense. He has to figure out the quarterback position, which has been an unsolved mystery for decades in Cleveland. The margin for error is 0. If this goes wrong, if he hires the wrong coach and the Browns have another losing season, the entire operation might need to be blown up from ownership on down. The Kevin Stefanski era ended with a sense of tragedy and what-ifs. He arrived in Cleveland with no head coaching experience, won Coach of the Year in his first season, broke a 17-year playoff drought, and gave Browns fans hope that maybe, just maybe, their suffering was finally over. But the Deshaun Watson trade changed everything. That move, orchestrated by Andrew Berry and approved by Haslam, cost the Browns 3 first-round picks and saddled them with a fully guaranteed $230 million contract for a quarterback who was either injured or ineffective. Watson played just 12 games over 2 seasons before tearing his Achilles. He didn't play a single snap in 2025 while rehabbing, and even when he did play, he was a shadow of his former self. That trade destroyed Cleveland's ability to build a complete roster, limited their draft capital, and created a salary cap nightmare that will haunt them for years. Kevin Stefanski had to coach through that mess, had to deal with a revolving door of quarterbacks, had to watch his offense fall apart because he didn't have the talent or resources to fix it, and ultimately, he paid the price while Andrew Berry kept his job. It's one of the most controversial decisions in recent Browns history, and it's fueling a lot of the skepticism around Berry leading this coaching search. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely critical. The Browns will continue interviewing candidates, weighing their options, having internal debates about the direction of the franchise. Jim Schwartz and Tommy Rees have made their cases. Schwartz has the defensive excellence, the player support, the experience. Reese has the offensive upside, the quarterback development expertise, the youth and innovation. Other candidates will emerge. Names like John Harbaugh will create massive headlines. But at the end of the day, this decision comes down to Jimmy Haslam's vision for what he wants the Cleveland Browns to be. Does he value stability and defensive dominance? Does he prioritize offensive innovation and quarterback development? Does he go with experience or potential? Does he promote from within or bring in an outsider? Every path has risk. Every choice has consequences. What makes this story so compelling is that there's no obvious right answer. In most coaching searches, there's a consensus top candidate, a name that everyone agrees makes the most sense. But not here, not with the Browns. The debate between Schwartz and Reese has legitimate arguments on both sides. The national media is split, fans are divided, analysts can't agree. And that uncertainty is what makes this one of the most fascinating coaching searches in recent NFL memory. Because when Jimmy Haslam finally makes his decision, when he walks up to that podium and introduces the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns, half the fan base is going to erupt in celebration, while the other half is going to be furious. There's no middle ground. There's no safe choice. This is all or nothing.
The interviews on January 8th were described by both coordinators as professional and thorough. Schwartz and Reese both understand what's at stake. They know this might be their only shot at a head coaching job with this franchise. They know that if they don't get hired, their futures in Cleveland become uncertain. And they know that the entire football world is watching to see what happens next. The Browns have a chance to get this right, to finally end decades of dysfunction and build something that lasts. But they also have a chance to make another catastrophic mistake that sets them back even further. The margin between success and failure is razor thin. One of the most interesting dynamics in all of this is how the Shedeur Sanders situation factors into the decision. Sanders is being viewed by many as Cleveland's quarterback of the future, a player with franchise-altering potential if developed correctly. But rookie quarterbacks are fragile. They need the right coach, the right system, the right support structure.
If the Browns hire Jim Schwartz and he brings in an offensive coordinator who doesn't mesh with Sanders, that relationship could sour quickly and stunt the quarterback's development. If they hire Tommy Rees, they're betting that his familiarity with Sanders will accelerate the learning curve and maximize the kid's potential. But what if Reese isn't ready to be a head coach? What if the weight of managing an entire organization, dealing with the media, handling player issues, and making game day decisions proves too much for a 33-year-old first-timer? These are the questions keeping Browns fans up at night. The Myles Garrett factor also looms large. Garrett is the face of this franchise, one of the best defensive players in football, and a guy who's already expressed frustration with the organization. He requested a trade less than a year ago, before the Browns gave him a massive contract extension to keep him happy. If the Browns hire someone other than Jim Schwartz, and Garrett feels like the defense is going to be dismantled or diminished, he could demand out again, and this time the Browns might not be able to convince him to stay. Losing Myles Garrett would be an absolute disaster, a franchise-altering move that would signal complete organizational failure. So in some ways, Jim Schwartz isn't just a head coaching candidate. He's insurance that Myles Garrett stays happy and stays in Cleveland. That's real leverage that can't be ignored.
The broader NFL landscape is also playing a role in this decision. This is one of the weakest coaching markets in years. There's no Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan available. There's no clear-cut offensive genius who everyone agrees is the next great coach. John Harbaugh's the biggest name, but he's 63 years old and just got fired after nearly 2 decades with one team. Is he really the long-term answer? Kevin Stefanski is getting interviews with other teams, which creates an awkward dynamic where the coach the Browns just fired might end up being more successful than whoever they hire to replace him. It's a chaotic market, and that chaos creates opportunity for teams like Cleveland to take a chance on an internal candidate and hope it works out. As we wait for Jimmy Haslam's decision, as the Browns continue their interview process and evaluate every possible option, one thing is absolutely certain. This decision will define the next era of Cleveland Browns football. If they get it right, if they hire the coach who can finally unlock this roster's potential, develop Shedeur Sanders into a franchise quarterback, and brings sustained success to a fan base that's suffered for decades, it'll be one of the greatest turnaround stories in NFL history. But if they get it wrong, if they make another disastrous hire that leads to more losing seasons and more dysfunction, the Browns will become a cautionary tale, a franchise that simply cannot escape its own history of failure. The stakes couldn't be higher, the pressure couldn't be more intense, and NFL fans everywhere are watching to see what happens next. Disclaimer: this story is based on reports, public statements, and ongoing developments in the Cleveland Browns coaching search as of January 2026. Information is subject to change as the situation develops. Coaching decisions and organizational moves are based on available reporting from credible sports media sources. All perspectives shared represent analysis of publicly available information.